It's a year America would never forget. That year, it felt as if the heavens had turned against the nation. In Texas, Hurricane Harvey drowned entire cities in a matter of hours. Residential areas became oceans. Families climbed onto rooftops, waving wildly at rescue helicopters, their homes disappearing beneath them. Children gripped soaked teddy bears, shivering as the only world they knew washed away before their eyes. In Florida, Hurricane Irma howled like a beast. It ripped palm trees from the ground and tossed them across highways like spears. Power grids collapsed, plunging millions into suffocating darkness. Supermarket shelves went dry. Families gathered in their cars, listening to the storm pounding against the roofs. America wept. Aid was slow. Relief checks became the last thread of hope for millions. But while one nation bled and begged for mercy, thousands of miles away, in Lagos, Nigeria, a man was smiling. His apartment was silent, the curtains closed, and the hum of an air conditioner covered the city's noise outside. On the surface, he was everything respectable, educated, and polished. Once, he had been a senior special assistant to a state governor, a man of stature and influence. Neighbors greeted him with respect whenever he passed. But behind closed doors, in the glow of his laptop screen, his true self came out. His fingers moving over the keys, tapping in stolen numbers, weaving digital lies. His eyes flashing, not with sympathy, but with hunger. And then, in a whisper meant only for himself, he said, "They'll never see it coming." His name was Rafiu Balogun, and while America mourned its dead and begged for help, he was preparing to rob its most weak citizens blind. At night, in the silence of his room, Rafiu became someone else. The loving family man disappeared. The polite neighbor was gone. Alone with his laptop, he turned into a predator. His computer was his weapon, and the internet was his hunting ground. He began small, with just one stolen identity, then from another to another. Each social security number he collected was like a master key, unlocking money meant for people who had lost everything. Money for hurricane victims, money for families sleeping in crowded shelters, money for mothers waiting in food lines, holding their children in the cold. But to Rafiu, they weren't people. They were just names on a screen. When the first payments arrived, he stared in shock. The money was real. The system had no defenses. He leaned back, smiled, and whispered to himself, "Too easy." From that moment, there was no turning back. Every time the stolen money hit his accounts, his greed grew. His heart beat faster, and his smile grew wider. At first, Rafiu kept it small. A fake tax refund here and an unemployment check there. Just testing the system to know if it was really as weak as he thought. The government's databases, built to protect billions, were like paper walls. He pushed once, they bent. He pushed again, they broke. Then he found the trick that changed everything. A loophole so ridiculous, it felt like a bad joke. Dots in an email address. To government systems, each dotted email looked like a brand new person, but in reality, all the money went to the same inbox. One claim, 2 claims, 10 claims, then dozens. Every dotted email was another fake identity, another payout, another family robbed without even knowing. In the dark glow of his room, Rafiu leaned back, staring at his screen as the money poured in. He jubilated and whispered, "Brilliant! They'll never catch me!" And the numbers exploded. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and then millions. Initially, investigators noticed a strange pattern and a few odd claims, but by then, Rafiu was unstoppable. As the money started pouring in, his spending started quietly. A new iPhone 17 Pro Max and a shiny watch. Just nothing that would raise suspicion. But money changes people, and greed eats away caution. Soon, his modest life starts to feel like an insult. Why drive a cheap car when the streets of Lagos thundered with Lamborghinis? Why live in a plain apartment when million-dollar mansions were there to purchase? So he began to waste money. The first overspending was on a thick gold chain, so oversized that it jingled loudly whenever he moved. He ran his fingers across it and smiled, knowing most people would never hold such wealth in their hands. Then came the watches. Not one, not two, but collections fit for kings, from Rolex to Richard Mille, then Audemars Piguet, each worth more than what some American families lost in the hurricanes. Then cars followed, from Mercedes to BMWs. Then the true trophy, Lamborghini. At night, their engines screamed through Lagos like war cries. Neighbors stared, people whispered his name, and still, it wasn't enough. He moved to real estate. Agents quickly learned who he was. He never asked how much. He only asked how big and what's the view. Towers of glass, villas with marble floors flown in from Europe, mansions with gates so tall they blocked out the sun. But money didn't just buy properties. It bought attention. Soon, his homes turned into playgrounds. Music shook the walls. Champagne flowed like rivers. Women in attractive clothes lay beside his infinity pool, laughing and raising glasses in his honor. While Rafiu poured champagne under the Lagos night sky, across the ocean, another story was unfolding. Inside the FBI's cybercrime division, the glow of computer screens lit up a dark room. Agents sat, hunched over keyboards, scrolling through endless lines of data, names, claims, and bank transfers. An IRS investigator spotted something odd. Dozens of unemployment claims from different people, but all with the same strange pattern. A red flag was raised. The Department of Labor noticed something too. Hundreds of disaster relief applications filed with suspicious precision. Soon, the Social Security Administration added its own alerts. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't small. This was something new and massive. Agent Carter, an expert with 15 years on the job, leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. He had seen fraud before, petty scams, stolen checks, and fake IDs, but this was on another level. He slammed his hands against the desk. This isn't random. This is organized, and it's huge. He pointed at the screen, where numbers and transactions spilled like rain. Look here, claims from different states, all filed within minutes of each other. Different names, different addresses, but the money ends up in the same web of accounts. The FBI knew they couldn't fight this alone, so the IRS, the Department of Labor, and the SBA joined forces. 4 agencies in one mission, to track the ghost who was bleeding America dry. Bit by bit, the picture formed. One mastermind, thousands of miles away. At first, his distance made him seem unreachable. He wasn't in New York or Miami. He was somewhere outside US control. But Agent Carter wasn't backing down. He stood, voice firm and eyes burning. I don't care where he is. He's stealing from hurricane victims and he must be stopped. And while Rafiu laughed at parties, throwing bundles of cash into the air like paper, the FBI was already tracing his shadow across the globe. For years, Rafiu believed he was a ghost. He hid behind VPNs, fake accounts, shell companies, and middlemen. Every move was covered in layers of deception. Each transaction washed through so many channels it seemed impossible to trace. And for a while it worked. The FBI could see the fraud. It was like chasing smoke through a maze. But arrogance has a way of loosening even the tightest mask. One night, Rafiu made a mistake. It was so small, he probably didn't even notice. He logged into one of his fraudulent email accounts without masking his location. For the first time in years, his real IP address glowed on an FBI monitor, which is Lagos, Nigeria. Agents stared at the blinking signal in disbelief. After months of chasing shadows, they had a place. Still, one mistake wasn't enough. The FBI needed more. And Rafiu, drunk on wealth and women, gave it to them. Another time, while scattering stolen funds, He made the mistake of sending money into one of his relatives' account who live overseas. The name didn't match his fake identities. It matched his bloodline. It was like leaving a fingerprint on a crime scene. Agent Carter stood at the front of the task force room, a screen behind him filled with lines of connections, names, and accounts. He pointed to the one that mattered. "That's him," he said quietly. "We've got him." For years, this faceless thief had bled America dry, exploiting disaster victims from half a world away. But now, he wasn't faceless anymore. The discovery sent shockwaves through the agencies. A man sitting in luxury in Lagos had stolen millions from mothers, children, and families who had lost everything. The FBI built their case piece by piece, carefully and methodically. They didn't want him to run away again. They waited, watching and knowing that eventually greed would drag him into their reach. Years passed, and Rafiu felt he was shielded by wealth. His empire was too big and loud to resist. But while he flaunted his wealth, the FBI waited in silence. They followed every account, every transfer, and every careless mistake. Piece by piece, they built a case so strong it could crush him in any courtroom. All they needed now was him. And then it happened. For reasons no one fully knows, maybe business or greed, Rafiu booked a trip to the United States. The second his name hit the passenger list, alarms went off in federal systems, quiet and invisible alarms. Airports across America lit up with one message: if he lands, he doesn't walk free. Behind the scenes, the net was woven tight. Customs officers were informed. Plainclothes agents in place. Every move was planned. Agent Carter stood over the final checklist. With a calm voice, he said, "We've waited years for this." The second his passport scans, he's ours. No mistakes. The trap was ready. High above the Atlantic, Rafiu sipped whiskey in business class, phone in hand, feet stretched out, feeling relaxed and confident. To him, it was just another trip, another place to burn money and prove he was a king. He had no idea that below, an army was waiting. The plane descended, tires screeched against the runway, passengers clapped softly, relieved to land, and in the terminal, federal agents moved quietly into position. The airport was alive with its usual noise. Suitcases rolled across the floor, children cried, and announcements echoed. To everyone else, it was just another day. But hidden in the crowd, the hunters were waiting. Agents stood everywhere. Some wore suits, pretending to be businessmen, while others carried clipboards, blending in as staff. Their faces were calm and their eyes were sharp. And then he appeared. Rafiu, dragging a luxurious black suitcase, wearing designer sneakers and gold watches. He looked every bit like a rich international businessman. He walked toward customs with the same pride he wore in Lagos, passport in hand, certain of his power. The officer took it, slid it across the scanner. Beep! The green light blinked once, then turned red. Deep inside federal servers, alarms screamed. The name, Rafiu Balogun, had been caught. The officer's face stayed neutral, but his finger pressed a hidden button. In the agent's earpiece, a voice whispered, "He's here, move." And then the trap closed. Federal agents shouted, "Don't move!" The airport froze. Travelers turned, mouths open, phones raised. Plainclothes agents exploded from the crowd, weapons drawn. In seconds, Rafiu was surrounded, his face drained of color. For years he had whispered, "They'll never catch me." But under the harsh airport lights, the lie cracked. His hands rose up, shaking. The heavy click of handcuffs echoed louder than the flight announcements. Whispers spread through the stunned crowd. Who is he? What did he do? He looks rich. The man who thought he was shielded by wealth was dragged away in silence. No pride, no power or escape. After the chaos at the airport, Rafiu was taken straight into federal custody. For the first time in his adult life, he wasn't in control. He wasn't in a penthouse or behind tinted car windows. He was in a cold holding cell where the smell of sweat and metal filled the air. Days later, when he was transported to court, the world saw a very different man. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken. Reporters shoulder to shoulder, cameras ready, flashes bursting each time the heavy doors opened. On the front pages of America's biggest newspapers, one name was already in bold: Rafiu Balogun. Not the polished businessman or the international investor, but the Nigerian fraudster who had stolen from America's poorest. Then the doors opened again. Police marched him in. Rafiu looked smaller now, stripped of the swagger that once filled Lagos nightclubs. The designer suits, gone. Gold chains, gone. $1 million watch, gone. All that was left was an orange prison jumpsuit and shame. The judge entered. The room rose in silence. His hammer struck once and final. Then came the words that crushed the little hope Rafiu had left. This court finds the defendant guilty of wire fraud, severe identity theft, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. The room gasped. Reporters write furiously. Rafiu's lawyer panicked, knowing it was over. Then the prosecutor rose. She didn't waste her chance. She painted a picture so vivid the courtroom could almost feel it. Mothers in Puerto Rico waited for relief checks that never came. Families in Texas slept on the cold floor while millions disappeared into Rafiu's accounts. Disaster survivors betrayed by greed. Her voice shook with fury as she pointed toward him. "You didn't just steal money," she said. "You stole hope. You turned disaster into profit." The words hung heavy in the air. Even the judge sat still. Rafiu never looked up. His hands squeezed and his lips pressed shut. For the first time, he was truly silent. And then the sentence: 35 years in federal prison. Restitution, $40 million. The room exploded in whispers. Some shouted, believing it's too little for the millions he had stolen, but it was done. The empire was gone, property seized, the cars, gold, parties, all gone. The man who once ruled with money and arrogance, now dragged forward in chains. Police led him away as cameras flashed one last time, capturing the broken figure of a man who once called himself untouchable. The so-called king of fraud had fallen, and this time there was no escape. Moral lesson: Rafiu's story is not just about crime, it's a warning. Fraud may bring quick riches, but it destroys faster than it builds. The money vanishes, the power fades, and respect turns into shame. Real strength isn't in taking from the weak, it's in protecting them, because no matter how far you hide or how mighty you feel, there's always a punishment. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. And of course, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Goodbye.